The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman and Tony Kurre.
Yeah, baby. 941-1011, 941-1011 is our phone number. You can call us anytime. I am Tony Kurre. Yeah, that guy's been doing radio for some 40 years in Birmingham. I've come full circle, never done a Christian show before, and so excited to do it with my good friend Michael Coleman. Michael, how are you, my friend? What's going on?
Ready to start a new week out. Excited about tonight's game. And even though my team's not in there, of course, but the team I'm rooting for is the team that took my team out.
There you go. And you, by the way, you sound like you're in a little bit of a sewer pipe. So if you can change anything on that end, I don't know if we did a mic check with you before we started, but we'll get through it. So Michigan has looked unbelievable. It's funny because my son got involved in one of these bracket challenges. The first year I've never done a bracket. I had a bracket, but I didn't, pay to be in one. And he's the only guy out of 48 guys that's got Michigan tonight. So if Michigan ends up winning tonight, we'll have a little piece of the pie. So that's kind of good. So who do you think is going to get it done tonight, UConn or Michigan?
Oh, I think definitely Michigan's gonna take it. Yeah.
Sure. All right. Yeah, they're favored by 6.5. I think it's kind of a crazy day. We got the national championship game going on tonight, 7:50. We have people flying around the moon in Artemis, which is super cool. And we're doing our show Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission, and your mind. And we will open up with prayer. Michael, would you like to lead that for us tonight?
I would love to. Lord, we are so thankful for another day, a day in which we can look to you as the giver of all blessings. Father, no matter what troubles we find in this life, we keep our eyes focused on you, and it helps us see a much bigger picture, a picture of a God who loves and has created us for a very clear purpose in this life, and that's to reflect who you are to the darkness. Those who are lost, those who are struggling, those who desperately need a Savior. And I pray that something we say and do here will be able to connect with somebody that will lift their hearts and lift their eyes to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. College football, we have offense, defense, special teams. In the Holy Trinity, we have the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost. Tonight, I want to make an analogy with college hoops. Since we're talking national championship, a lot of people listening to the show on their way home here on 101.1 The Truth. By the way, we're on every night, Monday through Friday, 5 to 6 p.m. We are live. No recorded stuff around here. 941-1011. You can call the show right now and be on if you like. We move people that call the show right to the top. So feel free to give us a call, 941-1011. So I thought it'd be interesting tonight, since the national championship game is going on tonight. It'd be kind of fun to use some of those terms we use in basketball and then analogize them to the business world, because this is a business show seen through the lens of Jesus Christ. Are you feeling me on this? You got me? You got me? You trust me?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
We've been doing this show for 4 years. You know I've got you. I'm going to set you up with some nice ones. First question, though, is, and I actually got this info at TonyKurreRadio.net, which is my own radio station. I have TKR. Get the TKR app. You can hear Mission Minded on that radio station, not to mention this one right here, podcast. I have 18 different podcasts. I do them all over the country, all over the world. Fantastic. But you can also go to missionmindedradio at gmail.com, missionmindedradio.com, or missionmindedradio@gmail.com, and leave your questions for us or any of your comments. But info at TonyKurreRadio.net. What does the Bible say about gambling? I have seen and heard this question so many times. $4.5 billion will be spent on March Madness this particular year, which is a record. My son is in a bracket challenge. He's not a gambler, but he's never been to Vegas. I don't think he gambles at school, but he's in this bracket challenge, which was $20 to play. So you can make an argument that he's gambling. What does the Bible say about gambling? Is it good, bad, indifferent? What is it?
Well, there are several. You're not going to find anything a direct parallel to what you see today. If you're somebody who's looking for thou shalt and thou shalt nots, you're not going to find a direct parallel because there wasn't anything like sports betting and those kind of things available, obviously in the time of Scripture. But I do think there's several principles that can be violated, biblical principles. That,
by the way, if there was gambling, what do you think the odds would have been on David and Goliath? Just curious. What do you think? Goliath maybe like minus 1,000, 800?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
it would have been
a huge underdog.
See, now you say this now, but did we not cast lots back in the day? I mean, were we not gambling on Jesus' clothes while he was hanging from the cross? I mean, were we not?
No. Well, there's not an endorsement that was okay that they did that.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But you said there wasn't gambling. There was gambling.
Well,
I mean, gambling's been around ever since there were cavemen. I mean,
casting lots looks a lot like gambling, but it's actually when the apostles were doing it, it was a little different, and it's a very important distinction. Oftentimes, you see Jonah, you see another where people are casting lots. They're trying to do it in order to seek God's will, and in order to make decisions without bias. So it was not done out of profit or entertainment. It was to help them make what they believed was a way to be able to tell how God wanted them to respond. Now. So that's very different in principle anyway. The mechanism may look very similar.
Don't you think? Don't you think though they were looking for answers through chance? Correct. I mean, they even did it with Judas when they were casting like they were trying to figure out who was going to replace him because
it wasn't chance that they were doing that. In an effort that God provide them an answer.
Okay.
Now, so they were not playing a game of chance, but just to say, well, we're just gonna roll the dice. We're gonna put everybody's name on whatever, and we're gonna cast these lots, and then whatever that is, they were genuinely seeking God's input and God's understanding into a situation. That's vastly different than the principles that you see with gambling today. Mm-hmm. It's done primarily out of profit or entertainment. And so everybody's got to decide for themselves when you look at all, and there's several principles that can apply that make this problematic for believers. And so one of the things, we talked about last week, and I forgot what exactly we were talking about, is there's a lot of people who go, okay, if the Bible doesn't directly by command prohibit it, mm-hmm. then that means I can do it.
Yeah. Drink is another one of those. Yeah.
But again, the New Testament is not written in rules like the over 600 rules in the Old Testament law that was very specific. Because as the Jeremiah prophesied and other prophets prophesied, the time was coming when the law of God would be written on our hearts. And so the question, you start looking in the New Testament, it's very principle oriented. So to answer that question, it's much more complex than a yes or a no. So I'll give you an example. So there's a principle that says the love of money is dangerous. Not money itself, but the love of it, the pursuit of it. And those who want to get rich, the Bible tells us, can fall into temptation. Because, as Paul wrote, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And so that's just a principle, that's one principle that says if gambling is feeding your desire to gain money and to get rich quickly without work, that scripture warns that it can lead to harm, spiritual harm, but in real kind of harm, because it leads you in that pursuit. If that is your goal, if your eyes are not on Jesus but on keeping up with the Joneses, it can lead you to do all sorts of other things of an unethical nature. Now, gambling is part of that pursuit, and what actually happens, and we know this with all the people who are in Gamblers Anonymous and everything else, we've seen people absolutely destroy families because
don't have it to lose. Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry, I got you. We're trying to communicate. I recognize my sound is not coming in well.
Yeah, that's okay. It just sounds like you're off the mic. It doesn't sound like the microphone's on, but we can understand what you're saying. It's good. Yeah. It's interesting enough too, because again, just because it explicitly doesn't say "thou shalt not" doesn't mean that it's a good idea. We talk about covetousness and greed. Obviously, gambling stems from a desire to gain money, and you can make that selfishly or not. I think the really interesting, the love thy neighbor situation is gambling inherently is selfish, because if you're gaining on something, someone else is losing. Now, you can make an argument, well, screw Las Vegas. What are they losing? It depends on if you're talking about a friendly game, and obviously everyone's got money to play and they want to come to the table and they want to play a poker game. Well, but you can look at that from a standpoint of saying, well, listen, in order for me to win, you have to lose, and that's not good. Trusting in God, not in chance, which we just brought up about, doing the casting of the lots. And then really, stewardship, I think, is the most important thing. Christians are obviously called to manage their money responsibly, and throwing it against the wind. We've always said that, and we're certainly not here to tell anyone that they're gambling is horrible and terrible. I'm not doing that. I've gambled my entire life. I'd probably be a millionaire if I had never called my first bookie. I would be. But it's interesting because you always say if you don't ever take what you can't lose. That's the most important thing. I'll never forget, I was out in Las Vegas the first weekend when they had the NASCAR races out there. And this was about 15, 20 years ago. And there were all these, typically speaking, I'll just say it like it is, NASCAR fans who can typically be broad-brushed into a redneck group. We're all out there in Las Vegas for the first time ever. And I'll never forget seeing some guy with a Jeff Gordon jacket on. It was after the race. He was sitting at a blackjack table at Caesars, and he's betting $100 a hand at a blackjack table. And you could tell he obviously was down. He had his head in his hands, and you could look like he was on his last beat, his last breath. And his wife or his girlfriend, whoever it was, came up from behind him and tugged on his jacket, and he kind of whipped around and said, "What?" And she said, "Can I have another $5 for the slot machine?" For the slot machine. And he's like, "Didn't I just give you $5 like 10 minutes ago?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, but and I look around, and here's this guy with a stack of black chips. He's betting $100, $200 a game playing blackjack." And I'm thinking to myself, there were a lot of people that went out to Vegas for the first time on that race weekend that had never seen the lights and just, the air, the fresh air being blown into the casinos. There's no clocks anywhere, thinking, you know what, I'm going to come back and I'm going to take Vegas for everything it's got. And there's a reason why Vegas continues to grow, and the rest of us try to figure out how to make our payments. So, but it's interesting. We always get that question. Certainly, if you like to gamble, I had an uncle, Carl, who was a professional gambler. That's what he did for a living. Made a very good life doing it. He was a very good card player. I never forget going over and having Thanksgiving meals, and I'd be 12 or 13 years old, and he'd get me in a game of poker. And my dad was like, "Carl, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, he wanted to play." And I'm like, "I'm 12 years old, and I'm playing a professional poker player. Thank goodness we were playing for nickels." But yeah, so it is what it is.
I will say this: if you've got a buddy at work, and let's say your favorite team is Michigan, and their favorite team is Connecticut,
yeah,
and you go, okay, let's bet a Coke or let's bet lunch or something like that. I don't really see any real harm in that, because it's just a friendly little small wager that. Back in the day, I remember my great-grandmother wouldn't even allow cards at all into the house.
Yeah, well,
cards themselves were considered evil.
Cards and dice used to be illegal.
Yeah, and
you couldn't have cards or dice. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at things like that, I think when you put the principles, when I think you look at things like addiction and self-control, when the Bible, Paul tells the church at Corinth not to be mastered by anything, and when you are living a life of addiction, and gambling is certainly a part of that, it violates the biblical call to self-control and to be free in Christ, and it also, like I said, we know the impact it has on others. I know of no less than 5 people I've encountered in my life that they've lost marriages, they've lost homes, they've lost cars because of the addiction of gambling. Now, I know that's not everybody, and there are all sorts of extremes everywhere. It's like most things, you have to ask yourself, well, what's my purpose here? Here are the biblical principles that I've chosen to live by. These are the principles that I think ought to be first in my life. And I mean, it all depends on how far you want to go. I mean, when you really think about sometimes, even Paul in Romans 14 says it's better not to do anything that causes your brother to stumble. Now think about this for a second. There's all sorts of things out there that we do that may not be wrong in and of themselves under certain circumstances, but usually when you get into the nuance of our faith, the problem always is you have somebody of weaker faith or younger in their faith who can stumble as a result of our freedom. And Paul is very clear when he says, he talks about eating meat, and if the person you're with is a weaker brother and you're causing him to stumble by eating meat, then his faith is more important. You don't do that out of a desire to not cause him to stumble in his faith.
Yeah.
Now, so there's so many different principles. It's not a yes or no, is gambling prohibited in the Bible.
No.
It's just hard sometimes to be able to do certain things without violating, I think, or more weightier principles in Scripture.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of people out there that go to Vegas 3-4 times a year. They gamble and they fun. They don't gamble when they get home, and they're totally cool with it. There's a lot of people that can have 3 or 4 beers a night. There's a lot of people that can have sex every night of the week with their wife and their kid. Tiger Woods is a little different. We talked about him last week. He's got a sex addiction. There are different things that people can become addicted to. The one thing that kind of scares me, and again, I do not want to do this show to be preachy. Thank goodness I have a 21, an 18-year-old turning 19, and I have a daughter who's 14. Being a recovering alcoholic myself, that's something that I need to tell her. Listen, you have a predetermined gene in your body. Sorry, but I mean, give it a heads up. It's there, and you need to be really careful when you pick up your first beer. I'm just telling you. It doesn't mean you're going to become an alcoholic, but it's something that I want you to put a little nugget in the back of your brain, scientifically proven that you have a much better propensity to have a drinking alcohol problem. So that's why whenever you see these gambling sites, what's at the bottom of it? Gambling problem? I think it's hilarious because they're sitting there talking about, I'm going to take UConn tonight plus a 6.5. By the way, if you have a gambling problem, and it's the same thing, why I think that, and I'm not one of these, the whole world's going to hell and blah, blah, blah. I'm not. But the fact that the marijuana, the idea that now it's legal in 37 states, whether it's medicinal or recreational, and the fact that now you can gamble in 40-something states all at the same time, those are 2 really big things that you need to be really careful with. And they don't mix. That's taking tequila and mixing it with your bourbon. It sounds nasty, and it is nasty, but you just got to be really careful out there. And I hope youngsters are doing that, because the way they got these kids involved was to start with the fantasy leagues. Fantasy leagues was free. It was fun. It was neat. Then all of a sudden they were like, oh, wait a minute, let's have a fantasy league and let's get some adults together. And hey, I'll put 20 in, you put 20 in, and whoever wins the pot. Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, you're talking about a couple $100. That's the same thing as a bracket challenge. Well, now, of course, they've taken all these kids who've gotten all these fantasy leagues, and that's fun. I'm in 3 or 4 fantasy leagues myself. I think it's a blast. It's great. We have fantasy nights. We do the draft, the whole 9 yards. And now all of a sudden it's turned into, the game's not fun to watch unless you got money on it. And, it's difficult. It's something that you just need to keep in the back of your mind. Not all of us have that.
Well, I think that's why so many people, where it comes to drinking, what we commonly refer to as vices, that can lead to addiction. I mean, most people are going to teach their children, whether it's realistic or not. Some people may argue it's not. But we need to be talking to our children about these things and talking about the dangers of them, and treat them very seriously, because we see we see parents look the other way while their children, while they know their children are out partying, just saying, hey, it's almost like a rite of passage. It's a very dangerous thing. That permissiveness is a very dangerous thing to pass on to kids while their brains are still developing. They're not able to use good judgment, and I know all Christian parents wrestle with this. I wrestled with it while I was raising my 2 girls, and it's just a huge challenge, and we have to really lean on the wisdom that God provides us and educate them. I'm not saying always just it's a clear-cut yes or no, but you need to take the time to explain these principles and how God gives us this wisdom to keep from doing harm to ourselves or worse.
Yep. Let's get into some basketball analogy, shall we? Let's lighten the mood here a little bit and talk about, we got the big game going on later on tonight. So I've taken some things that I certainly are relative in basketball that I think go really well with the business world, and you are the businessman. You've run many businesses. I run a business myself, and I thought these would be kind of fun. So first question I want to ask you is, one of the underrated things in basketball is the assist. I always think it's interesting. Assist obviously is if I give you the ball, Michael, and you make the shot, I get an assist for that because I'm finding the open shooter. You have to make that shot in order for me to get the assist, and that's why you have these things called triple doubles or double doubles or anything else. So in the world of business, this is something I don't see a whole lot of unless someone asks for an assist. How often in the business world is it okay to say, listen, I want to help you, or do you need to be asked for that? And then when is it a good time to maybe get out before you're stepping on someone's toes? Why would someone not do that?
Well, I will tell you, so often is, when we have people like, let's just use an example, like in sales positions, or it could really be in anything. Everybody should have, a way to measure success, and usually we do that through what's called KPIs or key performance indicators, where it's you and your boss have agreed on a set of standards of this is how we're going to tell whether we're being successful or not. And sometimes people say, well, our sales goal is this. A sales goal can be a key performance indicator, but lots of times it's not as simple as that because there's all sorts of different factors, times of the year, product you're selling, all that kind of stuff. And so it really shouldn't be in a healthy business. If you have a strong leader, whether that's a business owner or a manager, you should not have to come asking for help. He or she should have key performance indicators in everything you do. And so when those are revealed every month or every quarter, somebody can look at that and say, yeah, you're not achieving what you need to achieve. Now, the problem, again, the distinction between a good leader and a bad leader, if it's just sales goals, hey, you're not meeting your sales goal, and they tend to go to, oh, well, you're not working hard enough, you're distracted, you're not a good salesman, all those kind of things. But a really good manager or owner will go to somebody and say, okay, these are the predetermined things that we established to measure success, and there's some of these that you are not able to achieve. So let's sit down and talk about it. And then a person would say, and this is all about accountability, but it's not accountability in a rigid, you messed up or you're worthless sense. It is hey, there may be some things that you're doing that you may not be aware of that's negatively affecting your output. And so a good boss comes in and says, okay, you're not making the standard. What can I do to help you achieve that standard? And then,
gotcha. And
then so you're not made to feel like you're failing. You have somebody that's pulling for you to be successful. I used to tell people all the time, I hired you to do this job. I need you to be successful. And let's sit down and talk about it and see how you're seeing it and how you're approaching it. And I may be able to see it a different way. So it may be that you do have the talent, you do have the ability, but the system that we have set up is not maximizing your output, or it's prohibiting you. There may be things that are artificially blocking that person from being able to achieve what you want them to. So a good boss goes and doesn't say you failed. A good boss goes and says, yeah, we didn't make the standard, so let's you and I have a conversation to see how do we fix this so that next quarter or next month you'll be set up for success.
There you go. Another thing that happens in basketball games are rebounds. A lot of people get rebounds, obviously, because you missed the shot. When you've tried really difficult to sell a proposal to a particular business and trying to land that big client and it doesn't work, what's the best way to rebound from that response? How do you respond to a missed shot in the business world?
Well, to me, the best thing to do is if you understand what you're doing, and I get that question kind of leans towards a sales position, but it could also be in the nonprofit space where I spend most of my time. That could be towards a donor, because we do sales in nonprofit. We're just selling the idea of community impact, and people are giving us money to support our efforts because they believe in that. That's still selling. It's not any different other than you, instead of giving a service to someone else, you're giving them a product or service directly to them. And so when you approach somebody with, hey, I would like you to come on board and help this, or help our efforts in this. Or it could be you go to another community partner and, hey, you want to collaborate, and here's my big idea, and here's where we all fit together. And sometimes people are just going to reject it for a host of reasons. Maybe they don't have the vision, maybe they don't have the resources, maybe they don't have the personnel to be able to pull it off. Maybe it doesn't fit quite in their mission or in their giving priorities. The worst thing you can do, and I have seen people do this, is they start compromising standards, ethics and standards, chasing a dollar. One of the things, it's called, in the nonprofit world, lots of times you'll hear this term called mission creep. And what happens is, let's say you're there to serve the elderly. But all of a sudden, this huge grant comes up that would really help you for the rest of the year, but it's to serve young adults. And you go, yeah, but we could still do that, what that grant's offering. We'll just, instead of focus on the elderly, we'll turn our focus and we'll bring in this money and it'll help everybody. But that's what happens is we start chasing dollars, and then we start changing our mission, and it's called mission creep. And then you can really, if you don't have any boundaries, you can really distort the mission.
So why is it called mission creep? Explain that for me. Okay, we've actually done a show on this. You can look it up wherever you get your favorite podcast, and it was fantastic. I remember you bringing this up the first time. I thought, well, this sounds really good. But explain again what mission creep means.
Yeah. So I'll make just a very general mission statement. So let's say this organization serves the elderly to ensure they have enough food. That's a very simple, so you're like, okay, we're about giving food to the elderly or supplying the elderly with food. So that's the whole of your mission statement. If you then say, well, we're going to add another population to that, like young adults, or let's say we're going to add clothes to young adults kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The reason it's called mission creep is because now your mission starts expanding, like you start creeping outside of your mission to chase money, to chase recognition, to chase whatever. And so what happens is it's just a slow creep over time where you begin to expand your mission just very slowly. It's not oftentimes usually in one big thing, but you look back after a year or two and you're like, wait a minute, we just slowly, we took on this extra thing, and then we took on this extra thing, and it just came about very slowly. You're just creeping along, but you keep adding to your mission, and now the whole thing, when you look at it, everything you're doing, it no longer fits what your original mission is. Now, I will say this. There's nothing wrong at all if you do decide to change your mission, if the board comes together and the staff and you say, okay, yeah, we want to alter our mission to include X, Y, and Z. Well, that's perfectly fine. And if you're going to go step outside of that, you want to do that. You want to redefine what your purpose is. Because sometimes you start off. I'll give you a great example. The March of Dimes. I think originally, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was polio, but it was. But then once polio began to be cured, then it went to infant mortality. When I was growing up, we used to do those 12-mile foot marches.
It kind of broadened, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had little babies, almost like a little Gerber baby on the thing, and it would say March of Dimes, and everybody would get donations, and they walked 12 miles. But it originally was polio, but polio was under control for the most part. It wasn't fully eradicated, but it was under control. So they shifted and said, well, let's now put our resources. We have this organizational structure. Let's move it to another purpose. But that was very intentional. If they had not rebranded their mission or restated their mission, if they just would have naturally gone off and said, well, let's start doing something for little kids, then that would have been a good example of mission creep.
This is another one that I'm. This is coming personal for me because I'm a go guy. I like pace. If I was a basketball team, I'd be averaging 95 a night. I do miss a lot of shots, but I take a lot of shots. But a lot of people like to control the speed of the game. When you're in a business world, and we'll go back to sales in this particular situation, and you're sitting there talking, and I've been with some people that can actually shoot the ball faster than I can. And it actually makes me, I've got a couple of friends of mine, ironically, they're in the car business, and they are actually talking faster than I can actually formulate what they're trying to say. And I'm like, slow down, stop, hold on. I don't understand what you're talking about. Chill out. It's to slow it down. For me to tell you someone to slow it down is crazy. It doesn't happen very often. But I do find myself sometimes I'm pushing because I'm pushing the pace, and I feel like if I can get them to go along with me on what I'm trying to propose here, I can get a yes sooner than later. And then you got other people that, quite frankly, are just plain passive. In the same business world, I see this every single day. They don't ever give you a no, but you don't ever get a yes. How important is your pace of the game, your pace of your gait? How important is it? And how important is it to maybe pull back a little bit when you're with someone that quite frankly just wants to go like a turtle and you're like, go, 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 go?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, to really look at a true basketball analogy, your point guard typically is the one that brings the ball up and down the court. Now, I'm a big Atlanta Hawks fan. I've suffered with them my entire adult life. They're actually doing pretty well right now, but they're a team that's designed to run. They get easy buckets because they're very athletic. They run the court. And so any chance they get to run, that's just in their DNA because that's how their coach coaches them. But a smart basketball player, let's say you're the point guard, a point guard typically knows when to push and when to back out and when to slow it down. So they're kind of your manager or your key leader, owner or whatever, and it's kind of driving everything. And if the rest of the team is not keeping pace or not taking their direction from the point guard, then things get messed up. Like you'll have people who don't hustle up and down the court, and so they're not involved in the play because the point guard can't wait for them to get down to the other end of the court and get set up and everything else. He's pushing the action if he sees an opportunity. But a good point guard also doesn't shove the ball into the lane when there's no pathway. So there's sometimes to push it, there's sometimes to pull back and watch the clock. There's sometimes you are intentionally trying to get your other people involved. So all of that leadership and all that awareness are things that I think are very effective in any sort of organization, for profit or nonprofit.
Yeah, I think, and I think you bring up another great analogy is we know, and Bruce Pearl said this the other night, defense and great point guards win championships. If you have a great point guard, it seems like we're seeing this now with Cadeau, the point guard for Michigan, has not come out of nowhere. He had a double-double the last game, but man, when you have great point guards, guys bringing up, controlling the basketball and not turning the ball over a lot, you're going to win some championships, particularly with defense. And you seeing two teams tonight, UConn and Michigan, can certainly get it on the defensive, and they do get back, so you don't see a lot of transitional baskets, which I think is really, really interesting. So the other question that I wanted to get into, this is gonna make some Alabama fans angry. Fans that or teams that live and die by the 3-point shot, you don't win championships. You just don't. The Atlanta Braves, I think a couple of years ago, led all Major League Baseball with the most home runs. We love the long ball. Everyone loves the long ball. It's fun to watch. They're a very exciting part of baseball. But you can have 350 homer guys on your lineup. It doesn't mean you're going to win a World Series. You have to have pitching. You have to play defense. And so the offensive part's not always the big deal. So I always see Alabama, who is one of the few teams in college basketball, actually shoots the ball from 3 more than they shoot from 2. I've never seen a team like that win a championship, because if you're having an off night from 3-point land, you're done. You're going to have some issues. Only when Alabama started pushing the ball inside the paint in their second-round game did they start actually having some success, because when you have to start guarding the inside, then it opens up the outside. So we get that. So with that being said, how often do we shoot from the logo? How often with far shots come big accolades. Hey, we love it when people hit 3-pointers. It's good because you're getting 50% more points you do from a 2. But also it's important to take the easy shot too. If there's something open, like you just said, in the paint, you need to be able to take those and not flip it back out to 3. So how do you tell your workforce, hey, listen, it's great. I hope you make all your 3s today. But man, if there's some low-hanging fruit, grab that too.
Well, actually, Nate Oates' principle is if you have open 3, you shoot it. He still implores you to have discipline. If you don't have an open 3, you share the ball. But you either drive to the lane, you either want a layup or a 3-point. What you don't want is the 15-footer or the 20-footer unless you have no other choice. I mean, that's his underlying principle that I've heard him talk about. And you can get into the math of it and, what you shoot on 2s versus, obviously you're not going to be quite as successful in most games as 3s. The guy in Birmingham that was at Sanford that's now at Texas A&M, Bucky.
Bucky Ball.
Yeah, very much employs the same philosophy. I think it boils down to there is, even though it looks like on the court sometimes that it can be chaotic because you run them down the court. Nate Oates says, yeah, we get it. Sometimes there's going to be mistakes because you're acting in haste. But so it's a little bit different than a lot of teams. I do think, though, there are some strict underlying principles at play, and to include defense. And if you don't run, if you don't take an open shot when you have it and you're on the court for 3, with some exceptions. I mean, they have some. Most of the big men can shoot 3s too, but there's some people who that's just not their thing. But there's a lot of underlying principles, and so everybody understands their role and the expectations of their leader. And when he says, I don't care if I know somebody can hit 3s. I don't care if they're 0 for 8. You keep shooting if you have an open, good shot. And so that when he makes that very clear, then people get on the court with a certain amount of certainty. Now, again, if you're not used to that style, you're looking back at it, it may not always make sense to you, or it may not always feel like the best way to do things. But I think in any business, You want people to take advantage of opportunities that they have. You want them to be aggressive. You want them to be aggressive, not in an unethical way, but in a hard. You want them to outwork, outrun, outshoot the competition. But as long as you have underlying principles that, so people can make those kind of decisions about, no, I'm instead of I stepped in, I think the 3-point line is 21 feet or something. No, I'm in 20 feet. I'm just inside the 3-point line. I'm going to drive or I'm going to pass it out for a better shot, because that's the expectation. And I think as long as everybody is on the same sheet of music and you're operating as a supportive group and you understand what the clear expectations are, I think you can be successful.
Another thing, this is, by the way, is Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission, and your mind. It's a business show seen through the lens of Jesus Christ here on 101.1 The Truth, 941-1011, 941-1011. Heck, if you're going to watch the game tonight and you have a pick, we'd love to hear it. Give us a call, 941-1011. Tell me why. Maybe we can make an analogy with this when it comes to business. Something I think is really important. We used to have free throws. We'd have to make 10 free throws in a row. My senior year in high school, everyone had to make 10 free throws in a row, and we could not leave the basketball court until everyone did.
Did you ever make 10 free throws in a row?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you had to make 10 free throws in a row. Everyone on the team, there were 12 of us. And once someone made 10 free throws in a row, you were done. You didn't have to shoot again. But until the last guy did it, we were in there one night for 3 hours, because one good guy would get 9 and he'd get up to 10th one. He just kept missing, and we'd sit there and you'd have to start all over again. But free throws were really important, and we shot 83% from free throw line, which was really good in high school basketball. You see it over and over and over again. I never forget. I forget who Calipari was playing. I think it was Kansas. It was 2007, maybe. One of the worst free throw shooting teams in college basketball that year. And he said, listen, when it comes down to it, we'll make our free throws. We'll make our free throws. Well, there they are, up 8 with about a minute and a half left, and could not make a free throw to save their lives. Kansas wins the national championship. May have been the game before the national championship. Anyway, pushed them out because they couldn't make the freebies at the line. And you see it over and over and over again. How many times if free throws have just come through, if you see a team 8 of 16 and they lost by 3, just do the math. If you make your free throws, you're good. So my analogy here is getting back to basics. I'll use this when I was in radio. I had a really difficult time, and I still do. I say what's on my mind. Sometimes I say things that people don't get or don't quite understand. I try to explain myself. It's just who I am. I've always been that way, and it's been somewhat successful. But when I would get on the radio, I would screw up left and right, and it was so important for me because we used to talk over the music, and we'd have to hit the post. That means we'd have to talk up to the first note of the person singing the song. And you kind of had to have your shtick together in order to hit that post, because sometimes you're talking for 15 or 16 seconds and you're doing a promotion, talking about, bar night somewhere, or, talking about someone's show coming up after yours. And so you'd have to hit that post, and I would screw up over and over and over again. And I would get down on myself. And so I had a guy named Marty Sobolinski, who was my boss at the time. And he'd always tell me, get back to basics, visualize your listener. Slow down, start writing down what you need to say, get back to bed. I mean, it was like going back to radio class all over again in high school. Get back to basics. Quit trying to push the envelope. If you got this bit that you want to do and it's just not on tonight, then don't do the bit. Just get down to basics. Just do straight intros, outros. Just get back to your basics. And again, I was 16 at the time. But sometimes I think in business we can do that too. I think sometimes we forget about the basics. We forget about taking those free throws at the end of the night to make sure, hey, listen, you got to take those free ones when you get them. And sometimes if you're not making your free throws, nothing else. But just talk a little bit about that and talking about, getting back to the basics in business when things aren't going well for you.
Well, I tend to view that as more of I've heard that analogy used more in football when you see teams that lack discipline and they're shoulder tackling rather than wrapping your arms around somebody. And I've heard coaches go, we're not going to worry about installing new plays this week. We're just going to learn how to tackle. We're going to learn how to hustle after the ball. We're going to learn how to get 11 people running towards the ball. those kind of things. And when you're looking at building an organization or you're looking at building processes, whatever it is, you've got some foundational principles that must be rock solid, that must be that people just on auto just do that, and so you can build upon that. You can call them elementary things, foundational things, whatever. But sometimes it's human nature. We try to cut corners. We don't do the hard work. One of the things I would see all the time in donor relations is you have somebody that comes along and gives you a $5,000 check, $10,000 check, and you tell them thank you very much, and then you don't contact them, you don't give them an update, you don't tell them where you send them a thank you note, but you don't stay connected to them. One of the things I remember one time was there was a donor. This didn't happen in the organization I was with, but I'd heard about it. Somebody had left a gift in their will, and we call that plan giving or legacy giving. So after you die, you leave a certain amount of your estate to a nonprofit to help continue with the work.
I wish more people did that, by the way. I don't think people even think to do that sometimes, and it's such a beautiful thing.
It's a real... sometimes they do it and they don't tell you that they've done it, so you don't find out until after they pass away, which is a nice surprise, but you would like to be able to thank them and appreciate them and steward them.
That's why they did it that way.
Yeah. But so what happened was this person actually let this nonprofit know it, and the nonprofit was very thankful. But like 5 years went by, and they never... now, this person was not a regular donor. It just says, hey, I'm leaving you this huge gift. And they never reached out to that person. They never kept them included in what was going on in the organization. And that's just elementary. You want to maintain a relationship, which means that's something that you have to initiate. And as a result, 5 years went by without contacting them. And then, lo and behold, that person... rewrote their will and left that money to another organization.
Wow.
And so when you go back, you look at, that was a very foundational thing, which is you don't just show appreciation once. Somebody commits to you and shows that they're really pouring into you, then appreciation goes with forming a relationship, continuing to share with them the potential impact of that gift, and you continue to share appreciation for as long as you have that relationship with them. And so that was one of the foundational things, and as a result, it was a big cost to them in the end of what they lost.
That's crazy, and that's unfortunate that actually happens. All right, last question here, and then I want to talk about a movie I saw this past weekend that I want to share with you. There is this thing called home field advantage. Everyone knows the home field advantage. I would say probably in college basketball, the home field advantage is more prevalent and relevant than any other sport in all of sports. Some people may have an argument with that. I think I'm actually correct on that. But away teams roughly win 34% of the time, regardless of who they're playing, which is by far the biggest home field advantage in all of sports. I remember thinking to myself, if I could just get my client to come to the radio station, I was going to slam dunk it. It was over.
Yeah.
If they were going to come to my place, let me show you what we got. I knew they were going to be turned on by the lights and the sounds and the people, and I knew that they were going to get all giggly, and it was a slam dunk. If I'm meeting them out at a bar or a restaurant or something and we're sitting there trying to do a proposal, it's one thing, but if I could just get them in to show them what it's all about, I knew it was going to be a slam dunk. Have you used that? I would think in some of the businesses you've been in, that's certainly very, very important, and I like to call that the home field advantage. We also had a couple of restaurants, and I've got one, that I know the manager and I know everyone. So I walk in the door, everyone's like, Tony, what's going on? And that makes me look like the man. So if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, they're like, wow, this guy knows some people. It's a good thing. Village Tavern, I take all my business people down there whenever I go. I feel very comfortable. It's my home field advantage. How often does that happen to you in the realm of business?
Well, it depends on what you're selling. If you're selling a service, you want them to connect. You want them to see your product or your service in a way that's not just you telling about it. Either it's other people telling them about it, or is they're seeing it firsthand. Now, nonprofit space, it's easy because you can invite people. We used to invite people to food bank all the time, or we would invite them to the mission, and they would interact with those that you were helping, and so, or you would see their operation. One of the things that people had no idea about food banking is how heavy logistical it is. Logistically, I should say that it is. You got trucks coming in all day. You're doing food safety. You're doing inventory. You're having to turn that inventory right back out to the community through agencies, who then take it to their communities and distribute it. It's actually a pretty complex system that's really requires serious focus and serious management of it, and especially as we had it over 35 counties. So, that's. I'm sorry. I apologize. I lost my train of thought right when I went to getting people there. So if you have a product or a service, what do you want to do? What's home court advantage then? Well, it's talking to people who have been affected by that. It's having real life testimonials of the impact of your service, or of how I say that about my State Farm agent. He's a good friend of mine. We're in Rotary Club. I know that State Farm I could get insurance maybe a little cheaper, but I know that this guy is going to go fight for me, and anybody that came to me, I'd say, yep, Willie Durham, he's the man. Let him support. He's worth whatever you got to pay for it because of what you get. So those kind of things are very, very valuable in business, which adds to your product or your service you're selling.
There you have it. All right. So I have to laugh. I was sitting there, and this is a business show, but we're friends, and I like to talk about whatever we want to talk about as well. But it was just so crazy. I was sitting there with my son. We were watching the games on Saturday. I think the last game was over like at 11:30 or something. And so it was like 12:15, and he had to go back over to his mom's, and I didn't want him to leave. And I just, he's a night bird. He is wide open at midnight, and I'm just tired, but I stayed up just because I know he likes to talk late at night. He goes to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock. Anyway, we're sitting there, and so you watch these horrible movies on TBS because everyone's watching TNT and TBS because that's where the games are, right? And so they're putting all these new shows on right after each basketball game, so we'll watch their new stuff that's really, really bad, by the way. Yeah. So the Meg 2 was on, the big shark, the Megalodon shark movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I was telling my son, I said, this movie, it's terrible. It's horrible. It's not good. Even the graphics are not. And so we kind of get souped into watching it for the first 30 minutes. So anyway, I said, we've been wanting to watch the third installment of Knives Out, the Daniel Craig series. And I said, man, let's watch Knives Out. And he's like, dude, it's 12:30. And I said, well, can you make it? And he said, yeah, can you? And I said, yeah, I'm good for 2.5 hours. Let's go. So he's like, all right, well, let's watch it. So we put it on. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the Knives Out movies. They're great. I love them. I love them because they're relatively clean. They're PG. There's no sex in them. I don't have to worry about watching anything with my kids. There's some language in them, but there's language in everything these days. So, it's one of the cleanest films you'll see anywhere, and they're funny. They're brilliantly written. They've gotten better every single time. So the last movie that came out was last year. It was called Wake Up Dead Man. And the movie is centered at a Catholic church on Easter weekend. And I'm sitting there looking at, and the movie opens up, and it's Good Friday. And I'm like, I said, man, this is crazy that we're watching this movie. And here we are on Holy Saturday. And he's like, wow, what are the chances? I said, something just told me to put this movie on at 12:30. It was so funny. But if you get a chance to go see it, it's a great movie. It's fantastic. I don't know what kind of movies you're into, Michael, but one of the best movies I've ever seen. Was hilarious. I'm a big Daniel Craig fan. I'd actually say that he's better in these Knives Out films than he is in the James Bond films. And the good thing about that is he can play this character for Knives Out for the rest of his life if he wants to, because he's not jumping from boats and jumping from airplanes and everything else he do in a James Bond movie, although I thought he was great in James Bond movies too. But it's called Wake Up Dead Man, the Knives Out series, if you get a chance to go see it. And it's a perfect Easter movie.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. I've only seen one in the series, and I think that was the one that I saw. Yeah, I didn't know much about it and just kind of stumbled across it and was looking for something to watch. Yeah, I thought it was very good, very entertaining.
Oh, it's good. You should check it. What kind of movies are you into? What kind of movies do you watch?
Well, I hate to admit, of course, I like comedies, and I like thriller. I'm kind of a horror movie. I'm not a lot of blood and guts. I mean, it's not just gore for the sake of gore. But I've just always kind of been drawn to monster movies and
really,
yeah, and
that surprises me.
Well, I'm not really sure why that is. Well, I will tell you. Talk about real child. I have to check the time here because we only got about 3 minutes left. When this had to have been 1972, maybe 73. My dad and I were on his motorcycle. My mom and dad were going through a divorce, and my dad was a big motorcycle guy at the time. And we were driving to see his brother in Huntsville down from Greenville. So we'd been a long way on that motorcycle, for a kid in the back. So we stopped in Decatur. We're going to spend the night in Decatur. And I remember this. He says, "Hey, you want to go see this movie?" It was called The Legend of Boggy Creek.
Creek.
Yeah, and basically it was a Bigfoot movie. It was about, I think it was, Legend of Boggy Creek was about a Bigfoot in Arkansas. And I'm sure if I went back and looked at it, I would laugh at the graphics on it. It was probably so terrible. But when I was 6 or 7 years old, I mean, it absolutely traumatized me to the point that my backyard ran into a drainage ditch and then woods, and I wouldn't cut the grass. I'd be about 5 feet away from that back fence because I was so scared. I mean, I was literally traumatized, and I think. As sick as it may be, one of the ways that I overcame it was just kind of exposure therapy, to where things like that didn't scare me anymore. I just pushed through several movies over time and just kind of just became my favorite genre.
That's hilarious. Yeah, the scary movies of our days. Every Saturday there was either an Abbott and Costello movie on, or there was some type of there was always a Wolfman on, or a Frankenstein movie, and of course they were black and white. But there was a movie that I actually pulled up, and it was called "It Came from Hell," and it was about this tree. And it was this haunted tree, and people would go into the woods, and this tree would obviously it's a tree, so it's not like a running tree. It was very slow, and the people it would scare them so badly that they would pass out, and then the tree would pick them up and then take them to the quicksand. Back in our day, quicksand was a big thing. You remember all the movies?
Yeah.
We had quicksand. For some reason, it's funny because I can't tell
you. You think it would be a much bigger problem than it turned out to be, as much as we saw in Tarzan movies.
You really would. Quicksand, man, was like in almost every movie I saw growing up. And I'm thinking to myself, you never see quicksand. Whatever happened to quicksand, man? You never see quicksand anymore. But this tree, we used to pick up people and would drop them in quicksand, and of course then they wake up and they would go under, and so it's called It Came from Hell. So if you ever get a chance, check it out. It's a really, really lousy movie, but anyway. All right, my man. Thank you, brother. Another Monday in the books. We'll get after it again tomorrow. Hope you enjoy the basketball game tonight. Forsaking my boys' bracket, I hope the Wolverines get a win tonight. I hope your team wins. And make sure you get after it again tomorrow, 941-1011, 941-1011 for Andrew, and of course Michael and myself, Tony Garrett. God bless, and thanks for listening to Mission Minded.
Thanks, everybody.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.